We've been talking about the Reagan and Bush administration's tax policies. Now, to make clear what those administrations, especially the Reagan administration, brought about in terms of economic discrepancies among the people, let's take the federal income tax returns from 1989. Well, in the year 1989, a time of middle class decline, the top 4% of all wage earners in the country collected as much in wages and salaries as the bottom 51% of the population, believe it or not. In more precise numbers, 3.8 million individuals and families at the top earned as much from their jobs as did 49.2 million individuals and families at the bottom. To really bring it home to you, I can show you the figures for 1970 and 1959. Here goes. In 1970, the top 4% earned as much on the job as the bottom 38%. And in 1959, a time of growing middle class prosperity, the good old days, they earned as much as the bottom 35%. Let's take a closer look at our middle class. Median family income in 1989 was $34,213, which means half of all Americans earned more and half earned less. So the heart of the middle class may be defined as those wage earners who reported incomes between $20,000 and $50,000 on their tax returns in that year, and they accounted for 35% of all tax returns. Slightly fewer than 10 million tax returns were filed by the $15,000 to $20,000 income group that year. That represented 10% of all returns. At the other end of the extended middle class are people earning $50,000 to $70,000, $75,000 rather. That income group filed a total of 9.2 million returns, accounting for 10% of all returns. Overall, 53.2 million individuals and families in the extended middle class with income between $15,000 and $75,000 filed tax returns. They accounted for 55% of all returns. That put 37.3 million individuals and families at the bottom with incomes below $15,000. They represented 39% of total returns. While this figure includes returns filed by teenagers working part-time, the overwhelming majority are married couples, single persons, and single parents who represent the working poor. Now look at the other side of the coin. How does the tax system figure in this matter? Okay, during the 1950s, median income families each paid 1.7% of their income in Social Security taxes. In the 1980s, they paid 7% of their incomes. Those with incomes of 10 times the median income paid tax of 0.2% of their income in the 1950s. In the 1980s, they still paid tax of less than 1% of their income, next to nothing. Another set of numbers. In 1970, individuals and families with incomes between $500,000 and $1 million paid, on average, $304,408 in combined federal income and Social Security taxes. By 1989, they paid $168,714, or $135,694 less than 19 years earlier. That amounted to a tax cut of 45%. 45%, folks! By way of comparison, during the same period, the taxes for people in the $25,000 to $30,000 income group fell a meager 9%. When Congress enacted the Tax Reform Act of 1986, lawmakers hailed its alternative minimum tax provision as the most stringent ever, guaranteeing that nobody would escape paying at least some tax. Under the existing law that year, 198,688 individuals and families with incomes over $100,000 paid alternative minimum taxes totaling $4.6 billion. 3 years later, in 1989, under the new law praised by those lawmakers, 49,844 individuals and families with incomes over $100,000 paid alternative minimum taxes totaling $476 million. So Do you see what's happening here? Passage of the toughest minimum tax ever resulted in a 75% drop in the number of millionaires who paid the tax and a 90% drop in the amount they paid. On average, a millionaire in 1989 paid an alternative minimum tax of $116,395. 3 years later, the average millionaire paid $54,758. That amounted to a 53% tax cut. Reaganomics was at work. Incredible, isn't it? I wouldn't call Congress indifferent, as some liberal economists like Ezra Williams and James Bernstein do. Nothing indifferent about it. Senators and representatives were active accomplices, or worse, instigators of this whole process of shifting tax burdens to the middle and lower income groups from the wealthy. Here's yet another set of numbers. Between 1980 and 1989, the average wage earned by those in the under $20,000 income category rose $123, from $8,528 to $8,651. That was an increase of 1.4%. Over the same decade, the average salaries of people with total incomes of more than $1 million rose by $255,088, from $515,499 to $770,587, an increase of 49.5%. What's this? This is a total abomination. Also, don't forget that what I'm talking about is their increase in wages and salaries alone. As you may recall from the last lecture, the interest on bonds issued by local and state governments is exempt from federal income taxes. As a result, about 800,000 persons with income over $100,000 picked up $20.1 billion from their exempt bond holdings and escaped payment of $5,000. Picked up 20 persons with income over 100 is exempt from federal income taxes. As a result, about 800,000 persons with income over $100,000 picked up $20.1 billion from their exempt bond holdings and escaped payment of $5.6 billion in federal income taxes. Naturally, that lost revenue was made up by other taxpayers. Among them, the 26.5 million persons with incomes of under $20,000 a year who obligingly pay taxes on the interest earned from their miserly savings accounts. Altogether, these persons paid about $7.1 billion in federal income taxes on savings account interest that averaged a whopping $1,782 for the year. Not to mention that many of the same millionaires escaped payment of billions of dollars in state income taxes as a result of their investment in United States government securities, which are also exempt from state and local taxes. We've been talking about